So this is an example on renting versus buying. Say that there's a house for $250,000 and you had a 10% deposit, so you got $25,000. You're going to have start-up costs on top of that. So when you get into the home, your 10% deposit is going to be approximately 25 grand, plus your start-up costs, which in Victoria will be $10,660 on stamp duty, plus other costs. I'm saying about $2,000. They usually say a rule of thumb is you get the price of the house and times it by 5%, and that's roughly what your start-up costs will be with stamp duty and legal. So for this example, there's a 90% loan at a 7.5% interest rate. Okay, so that $19,000 that is up in the top corner there, what that represents is what your loan repayments will be per annum. So per month, I think it's about $1,800 roughly. So in the first year, this is how it's going to be divided out. So in year one, that's the interest component, and that's the principal and equity. And over the years, you can see how the interest becomes less as the equity becomes more. So at the end of 5 years, you would have paid $81,000 in interest, and you'll have $18,500 of equity in the house, plus your initial deposit. So the outcome of this example, your start-up costs are $12,500, plus your interests, $81,000. So your total over 5 years' time is you're going to be $93,500 out of pocket, or $18,700. So if you buy a house as your principal place of residence, that's it, the money's spent. There's no tax deductions or whatever. You've spent $93,000 to move into this house over 5 years. If you were to rent the exact same property at about a 4.5% yield, which is probably about the market rate at the moment, it would have cost you $11,250 per year. So as you can see, there's probably about a $7,000 difference from a cash flow perspective of renting versus buying. But the other side of the coin is if you buy that house, you own it. And if the property increases in value, that's your value. So even though at one side of the coin, there's $7,000 saved per year, which then you can then invest in another property, or there's lots of options you can do with that money. Or if you bought the house, even though you've spent it, at least you know you're most likely going to get a return on it. Or you could do both. You could buy a house and rent it out and rent from someone else. So that way your cash flow is about the same, but you've got the tax benefits. So all those interest, the $81,000 interest, would be a tax deduction. So you would be better off doing it that way, but it all comes down to what your particular strategy is. So every individual is different, and what they want to do is up to them. But this is just sort of a different example that you probably haven't seen before on how to look at a rent versus buy. So why buy? Gives a great sense of satisfaction, owning your own home. Lots of people love to do it. Sort of the great Australian dream is to own your own house. Buying means that you own an asset, and over time it will go up in value. So buying an asset, if you're sitting on it, you are probably progressing your financial future and having a bit of security behind you. And that's what it is. It's for a lot of people, buying their house is security. So they might go on and have a family, and they know that it's their house, and they're pretty safe and they're comfortable in their home. And I've left a couple of question marks there, so there's lots of reasons that you'd want to buy, and that's for you to fill out. So to have a think about why you'd want to buy your own home. Now, why rent? Rent, like I said, is better for cash flow purposes. If unexpected repairs comes up, if the water tank blows up, it's always a common example. You won't have to pay for it. The person who owns the home, it's their responsibility to do repairs. Whereas if you own that house, unfortunately, you're going to have to foot the bill. So renting can take away a bit of the worry that you know that you've got to pay a certain amount per year, and any repairs on top of that isn't your responsibility. So you can be pretty safe there. And renting doesn't tie you to one place. Usually for a year you'll rent a place for job purposes or whatever reason it may be. You want to move because you've got a growing family. Renting gives you that freedom to move on every 12 months, which can also be an inconvenience because if the person who owns the house wants to move on, they also have the choice of getting you out. It really depends on your circumstance. So I've just put together this little table. I'll have this on my website, you can download it and have a look and just really go through for your circumstance what are the positives and negatives of each particular option.